You're listening to We Are Future Talk series, a show for leaders and professionals who want to future-proof their careers, their teams, and their businesses.
Each week, we help you to reimagine the world of work by bringing you top strategies, actionable tactics, and inspirational interviews from industry leaders for you to not only survive, but thrive in this more complex, more connected, and more competitive environment.
You can get the show notes to this episode and access to further resources over at wearefuture.com.
And as we know, the only way to prepare for the future is to create it. So let's get into it.
Okay, well, thank you firstly, again, in terms of your time, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a great time to be talking about this. And I mean that in a positive way, considering what's happening around the globe. No doubt that will come into play as we have more of a conversation about it. But broadcasting essentially from Newport Beach in California, a very different place to where I'm sitting. What's the weather like over there? What's the state of play?
Oh, it's a beautiful day. It's in the mid-70s, sunny, surf's good, air's clean, no complaints.
Oh, awesome. And if for those who aren't aware of Frank's background, he has for many years now been talking about flexible workspaces and helping companies understand how to integrate flexible workspaces, what that actually means. So I'd love to flesh that a little bit more. But he's also a regular speaker on the subject of, I guess, working agile. And essentially, especially in Australia, more organisations have been encouraged, we'll say, to consider a remote working program for all staff. And so it's been an interesting time and an interesting transition, very generally speaking, for Australian organisations to go through that. But also knowing that how local governments are, or even national governments are, looking at providing some standardization with the way that we're working. Obviously, there's more and more people working from home, and it completely changed the culture and even what's required of leadership from a support point of view. But I would be very interested to hear a lot more about what you've been seeing happen and what you've been helping or supporting through this very interesting time.
You know, I think that's an old curse. May you live in interesting times. Disregarding our current event, the coronavirus pandemic, I think for the last several years, more and more companies have made the realization that flexible work is a necessity. You're in the talent business in many respects, and I think you recognize it in the war for talent. If the company doesn't have a good flexible workplace program, they're not going to get the very best people.
Yeah, very true.
People want a life balance, and they don't want to just be in one place all the time. And I'll use myself as an example. I used to have a nice big office overlooking the beach in Newport, and it was great, all that sort of thing. And now I have 4 or 5 offices. They're all small, and I move around based on what I'm doing and where I want to do it. And it's so much more productive for me. And I think that all of us have come to that view. And we came to the view a number of years ago. We were working with a major company, and they said, well, our occupiers. And I went, your occupiers in your space. Yeah, our occupiers need this, this, this. And I said, there are no occupiers anymore. There are only travelers. And that's the way we work today. And if you think in terms of systems and systems that are effective in the use of managing personnel and facilities on a joint basis, you should really think in terms and look very closely at a lot of the major travel management systems that are used by large corporations that track the mobility of people and provide sustenance to them through those items, as opposed to trying to do it from a single facility point of view.
Yeah, definitely. Are you noticing particular industries or organizations that do it better than others? Or do you feel that that's just a move that everyone's making in their own sort of staggered way?
I think it's universal.
Yeah.
There are always earlier adapters or industries that are better suited to some things than others, or have greater need. But I would posit that all companies today are international.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Okay. You right now are speaking to me, and we've crossed a border and a timeline, as a matter of fact. So every company today is international. As we think in terms of flexibility and hiring and this and that, what flexible workplace and flexible design gives us today is the capacity to hire the very best people, no matter where they are.
Yeah.
And we don't have to move them. We don't have to relocate them anymore. You and I could work together just fine. We're working right now.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
don't need to be in the same room. And so I might say, I want the finest person to help me find talent. And you might say, I want the nicest old guy in Newport Beach for some old reason. I don't know. But, ex-surfer hippie type, it's a little strange. But, and we don't need to uproot our families or to leave our loved ones or to have the expense of relocation. We don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a huge freedom for corporations and a wonderful benefit to families as well. There's no more, well, I had to leave my homestead because I needed to get a good job. You don't need to do that anymore. And that's fabulous. It's the ultimate redistribution of wealth in many respects.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very empowering consideration, isn't it, when you think about that, where we were restricted potentially locally to what opportunities would come our way.
Right.
That we essentially have a global market in terms of.
We do, and it runs both ways. As an employee, you have a global capabilities to search, and as an employer, you have a global capabilities to search, and that gives you the capacity to really build unique cultures, and to really have a step up, and also in the corporate view, to work 24/7, which is kind of a benefit for productivity, and from the personal view, to never have to uproot your family or you change your own culture. You can live in a village in a certain type of country and enjoy your local culture, enjoy everything, and still work in San Francisco.
Right.
You can do all of those things, and that's a big benefit. And I think that's one of the future of work issues that we're dealing with. It's not just officing; it's how we treat people.
Yeah. And you introduced this idea of that work from work from home and being able to embed your local culture, let's say, but then this opportunity that not just from an employment or in terms of a workforce point of view, that we get introduced to this sense of cross-cultural or multicultural value set that can only, in my opinion, can only create positive things for an organizational culture or a business culture. Have you found that as well in terms of what you've seen it as a trend? Have people embraced that idea? Or
I really do. I'll take our own company as an example. Our executive team for our core company is in Dubai, is in Amsterdam, London, Lexington, Kentucky, Las Vegas, Nevada, Monterey, Mexico, and Newport Beach, California.
Wow.
So, and we meet constantly.
Sure.
They're daily, 2 or 3 times a day, little quick meetings, this 5-minute things, this and that, checking back and forth. We're as close as any group of executives can be, and yet we don't physically live in the same places, and we come from different religions and different cultures and different languages, and different governments and different currencies, yet we all get things done perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, let's explore that a little bit more, because I think, in a practical, like, the concept itself sounds amazing to people who might be listening to this. But then if you are in one of those situations where you want to embrace that, I guess, multiculturalism and essentially create this team culture where everyone feels like they're a part of that team, what are some practical approaches to creating that, knowing that you have that within your own business? Was that whether it was intentional or not, I'm not sure, but is there anything you can share in terms of the how?
Yeah. Whoever's late to the video meeting has to tell a joke.
Yep.
No, I really don't know. I think it's a willingness to just constantly explore. And during this current pandemic, and I say current because I've been through a bunch of these in different ways,
Yeah.
and a bunch of economic cycles. And
Yeah, sure.
we're in the middle of the Great Recession. I remember the three before that. So I call this as our current pandemic. Sure. And it happens to be a disease. Mm-hmm. And I just forgot exactly where I was going to go with that. It was brilliant. As we look at what's going on right now, there are so many things that we can consider. And I heard a person the other day say, I can't wait to get back to the good old days.
Yeah, right.
And I thought about that. And I said, well, isn't that tomorrow?
Yeah.
And they want, I can't wait till things are the way they were. And I think as we explore the future of work in general and what we're talking about today with this pandemic and the good old days are tomorrow, every day. And the issues you have to explore and the people that will succeed, the companies will succeed, are the companies that don't have to focus on how to figure out change management. But the companies that just automatically change constantly. And I think that I come from a background. I obviously live on the beach, and I'm an old racing sailor. Okay, you have a lot of those in your part of the country, your country too. And I know that you always sail the fastest if you steer the least. So you want to make little micro adjustments as you sail, because every time you turn the rudder hard, it's a break. So every time you don't change, then change big, it slows you down. But if you constantly make little adjustments to your whole organization, that means you sail the fastest. And I think in business and in a lot of things in personal life, it's that adaptability. Darwinism wasn't about the strongest, the survival of the fittest. It was about the survival of the people or the species able to adjust. And embrace a new environment. And that's what we have to be doing today and really every day. It's extreme today. Right now, it's a real extreme. We're all focused on it. As soon as this is over, half the companies and half the people will be happy with the good old days. Yeah. The other half will actually move forward.
Yeah. So, I like that incremental change definitely resonates with me, even just personally, some of the conversations that are happening. I think there's just this, there had been this wave of having to drastically change because of, just recent times, but also in order to survive or for the business to feel like it was going to still be relevant, let's say, especially those that had businesses where, the way that people worked was predominantly in an office space and, having to dramatically change that just to survive, so to speak. But I think more realistic is to consider that all the changes are happening are much more incremental in nature, to your point, and that it's just those 1% improvements or changes that will then lead to what we want it to be. It's not about these big, bold, dramatic, significant changes, right?
No, that's really true. I mean, we talk about people working remotely from their homes, and we talk about the benefits of being able to hire people to do work from anywhere and all that sort of thing, and change. And when you look at companies, and we're talking about flexible work strategies that people needed to attract talent. Well, we work with a lot of large global Fortune 1000 companies, and we've been watching them over the last several years. The HR department is kind of figuring out with the facilities department how they're going to manage workplace change and redesign and getting people out into flexible work structures, et cetera. And they all try and put to the CFO and get them to approve what was going to go on and all this big change management stuff. And then about 6 weeks ago, everybody said, you're going to work remote. So all these people have had their threshold, their foot hovering over the threshold. And then they just had to step through the door. They got kicked through the door. And they're never going back. They're never going to go back. The good old days are tomorrow. They're never going to go back and do things the same. Just imagine, take the largest company in Australia, and I don't know what that is. But imagine the CFO of that company right now walking through their corporate headquarters, and it's empty. And they see 100,000, 1 million square feet of space with nobody in it. And then they say, company's running just fine. I guess we don't really need this space anymore. If I get rid of this, that's really going to help my balance sheet, and that's going to help my shareholder value, and that's going to help the shareholders, the investors that are in our company. I think I'll get rid of half this space.
Yeah, reduce costs.
I think, and I'll take your again, in the talent industry. I don't know in your market what the average life cycle of an employee is within a particular company or company group, but in the U.S. it's around 6.5, 7 years. Most CFOs right now are trying to figure out how to get the long-term liabilities in their balance sheet to match their employee life cycle for fixed assets, basically their real estate. Most of their have 10 to 15 year life cycles in their real estate, but 6 to 7 year life cycles in their employment. And those don't match because they're not always in the same place with the same needs. So there's always this excess of real estate sitting around. As they move into the flexible workplace models of co-working, business centers, accelerators, virtual officing, remote working, all the different models around flexible work, they're going to start rationalizing their portfolios, getting rid of the debt on their balance sheet, freeing up that capital for more investment into the companies and paying their shareholders better value. All of that real estate then is going to get repurposed. And how is that going to impact things like housing?
Right.
Things like transportation. I mean, how is our current pandemic going to impact transportation? I remember people in New York used to laugh at people in California. They say, yeah, we got all these subways and trains, and we got all this cool stuff, and you got freeways that are all congested. And I'm sitting there saying, yeah, I'm driving the freeway today. I have a nice HEPA-controlled, air-conditioned car with nobody else here with me. I sure don't want to be in the subway today.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on a commuter train today. So rethinking as a result of pandemic, things like transportation, and saying, well, do people really have to go to the city to work, or could they work remotely?
Yeah.
If they just worked remotely 20% of the time, what would the impact be on transportation? It'd be massive. If we got rid of 20% of the commercial space in all of the office buildings in the world, what can we do with that space?
Absolutely. And I was actually just having a similar conversation about this. One of my team members is based in Manila, and Manila have been in lockdown for just over a month now. Yeah. But if anyone has gone to, a very, one of the major cities in Asia, it's very typical of, I think her travel time was on average somewhere between 1.5 to 2 hours in the morning and the afternoon. So you can imagine what kind of day that meant, being 5 days a week in an office, and how different it feels, but also how much time she gets back. And we were talking through just how life has changed, not only from a productivity point of view or a workload point of view, but even just getting those 4 hours back, what that has meant in terms of traveling for essentials like shopping and reducing
we all talk about
like that. So I get it.
We all talk about work-life balance,
right?
And unfortunately, commuter time is non-productive work time that takes away from the other part of your life balance. And if we can get rid of that or diminish it materially, then that's a huge, huge benefit. There's no question of that. And technology allows this today. The old management requirement to see the people working so they're really working, that's pretty much going away.
Yeah.
You don't have to see somebody being physically at a desk to know that they're working or not anymore. Technology, again, allows us to deal with that. I think as we look towards the future of everything, that we're going to lighten our load in many respects and bring back a better balance. It won't mean less work, though.
Yes.
It will be more productive work and not wasted time doing unproductive things such as commuting. The 35-hour work week or the 30-hour week isn't what we need. It's the non-commuting work week is what we need.
Yeah. And
overall.
Yeah, I like that, because I think for a long time as businesses, we've measured people's output on time they spent.
Yeah.
But if you take that time constraint away, so to speak, and make it about more deliverables and outputs as such, regardless of how much time it takes, I think, to your point, that balance and being intentional with where we're spending our time will completely shift productivity levels and even motivation levels, I would say, being that, we're taking a lot of that, I guess, potential wastage of time that we would spend in traveling or even just going to meetings. I've noticed definitely the intention with meetings have changed, being that everyone's working remotely. So rather than just this natural reoccurring meeting every week, people are challenging whether they need that meeting, if there's a better way to communicate or get information or decisions made, which is a really refreshing thing to see, right? And to your point, decisions that might have gone back and forth over 2 or 3 different meetings might happen in a, phone conversation over 10, 15 minutes. It's as if we're going back to the old days where having a conversation has, simplified the need to go back and forth or not, all these different approvals and things like that. So yeah, it's an interesting benefit, I guess, to what's happening with more people working from home.
Mm-hmm. And working from, home isn't always the best place to work remotely.
Sure. Yeah.
An awful lot of people, even a lot of the knowledge workers, don't have an appropriate place within their home to quietly work and to work without other disturbances, children, a spouse or a partner or roommates, maybe just the neighborhood they live in or traffic noise or something doesn't allow them a really quality work environment. Also, you know what? If my boss says I have to work from home, I want the son of a gun to start paying me rent for my office.
Yeah,
Really?
and it completely changes contracts, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
It really does.
Yeah.
So I think that flexible workplace patterns that include the ability to work remotely from home or Starbucks or a co-working or a business center or a combination of all of those things, to include virtual officing and in the very near future, virtual reality officing. All of these multitude of work structures are where we'll have to be comfortable. And like I said, we're not occupiers anymore. We're travelers. We'll go from place to different types of facilities for different work purposes. We'll carry our technology bundle with us so we can adapt. And so the only thing we really need is something literally to plug into, whether it's power or bandwidth or both. And we'll need more and more bandwidth and less power as we go forward with technology. I know my laptop now gets 19 to 21 hours off its battery. So I can pretty much work 2 full days with just one charge.
Yeah.
So power is nothing, but boy, do I want lots of bandwidth. I really want lots of bandwidth. So, we'll have to have that capability, but bandwidth and access is becoming, it's no longer a business element so much as it's becoming a right. We're allowed to have food, shelter, warmth, oxygen, water, and bandwidth. Those are the things that we need today to survive in the first world, at least.
Yeah.
And those are more and more on a global basis in all communities globally. That's it.
Sure. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot, Frank, because I know we've explored some of those themes. If you were working with an exec team or a group of leaders that were looking at making sure that in that future of workspace, their organization is still relevant, what would be the key things that you would suggest to that leadership team to focus on right now in order to ensure that the moving changes that are happening in all environments, that they have a strategy, or they have the mindsets to influence or prioritize those things that make them still relevant in their industry?
I think I'd start at the bottom instead of the top.
Okay, great.
And I think I'd stop at the bottom too, by the way. And I'll use our own company as an example.
Right.
In our company, we give them the old, "Hey, you just came on board. Welcome to Alliance" speech. And we explain to each person the one thing that they will get fired for is if they do not make their own decisions.
Wow, powerful.
So that's the most important thing. So you hire very smart people. You give them guidance and information, and then you trust them to make their own decisions. It's very easy to fix a decision that's been made wrong. It's very easy generally. Oops, you goofed. Here's how we'll fix it. How many times have you heard that? It's pretty easy. It's very hard for a company to move quickly if there isn't continual and constant decision making throughout the entire organization at every level, and the freedom and the knowledge that they're not just empowered to make those decisions, but they're required to. I think that's where I would start and stop. And it's not that we're the greatest company in the world, far from it, but one thing we have learned is that decision making at all levels is critical to speed. And it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. So speed is the issue towards developing a company today. It can be speed to quality, speed to product, speed to scale, in a number of things, but it's always speed is the most important element in business today.
Great. And so in terms of leaders and supporting their staff or their teams, do you feel that there needs to be a key mind shift change to support that thinking? I think what you mentioned is like asking key questions, or asking and not knowing is actually a great thing, because it helps us become open-minded. To have those
we have to find answers. We have to find answers. And I was chatting with a gentleman today, and we're chatting about a new hire that he just had in his team. And we were chatting about giving that person absolute responsibility for everything to do with their job, period. You are responsible for the following outcome. Good luck. That's it. Because with responsibility comes the privilege of freedom. And with freedom comes creativity and thought. You never want to work for a company or even talk to anybody that's just, "Oh, that's above my pay grade." You know, how many times have you heard that in the government? You know, that's above my pay grade. Oh, so I guess you stop thinking at a certain pay grade. That's when your brain turns off. Or, you know, like the militaristic decision-making process. You know, the general tells the colonel tells the major tells the captain tells the lieutenant tells the sergeant tells the private. No one's supposed to think above their pay grade. Or they have a hard time challenging above their pay grade, and that's wrong. Not that the military's wrong, or that the government's wrong, or this or that, but that thought process is wrong. Everybody has to work by objectives and have the freedom to make decisions, but take the responsibility for those decisions. That's just my own view, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that where people might feel overwhelmed with that sense of freedom. If you're clear around the objectives, and you're explaining that it's up to you to come up with the how with those outcomes in mind, it's interesting. I've noticed people collaborating with people they wouldn't normally. So seeking out experts as a way of helping them, equip them to make informed decisions, but trying things that no one would ever expect them to try because they were just given permission, so to speak, like you said, to own it and take some accountability, and how how quickly that can change someone's motivation levels in their own roles. It's a really interesting transformation that can happen in terms of not only one's development, but even in terms of that real team culture. Because I know that in those virtual environments where it may be something you need to explicitly communicate to people to create sort of that group vision, that's a really easy way for people to reach out, or cross-functionally reach out to people to, or have a reason to, I should say. And I think that for me really resonated, is that, that whole freedom in that decision making. You can come up with some really great things if you create that environment to do so.
Well, one of the other things that's interesting about remote work is, whether it's from your home or from a business or co-working center or virtual office, is you strip down a lot of the traditional office politics
Sure.
and the hierarchical sort of corner office lust that people have diminishes. They start valuing their freedom more than the corner office, and they start thinking, I'm going to be more productive than try and wear the nicest shoes. And you get rid of a lot of the false dynamics or non-productive dynamics that you find in large physical office structures. And that's quite beneficial. You also find that in remote meetings, people are a lot more willing to speak up. You put 10 people around a conference room table, and they all spend most of their time looking at each other and at body language and this and that sort of thing, saying,
Yeah.
is now my moment? Should I say something or not? But if you're in a video conference with 8 or 10 people and you say, well, hey, Sally, here's what we need to know, she's just going to tell you.
Yeah.
Especially if she's working from her home and her kids run by waving.
Yeah.
Everybody accepts that that's real life, and there's none of this false premise of, oh, I've got on my super heavy duty suit and I'm wearing my power tie. All that goes away. It's just bullshit.
Yeah.
And it just goes away, and people get a lot more real when they're not together sometimes than when they are.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And that's a very productive dynamic.
Yeah, that excites me, absolutely. I have often talked about in those virtual environments and meetings and so forth, some of the things you have to overcome, like, for example, the lack of body language and picking up on facial cues, so to speak. And you can a little bit, obviously, if it's face to face, but not in the same way can you pick up the energy as if you're in the same room. But flip that, based on what you're saying, it also takes away some of that office politics that we, there's unwritten rules, so to speak, of how we're meant to react around each other or when we're in the same environment. And yeah, so that for me really hits home in terms of some of the things that we could do differently as a result of that. And potentially even having meetings with people. I think we sometimes fall into this category of, okay, we have an all team meeting, for example, and invite everyone based on the fact that under a team structure, we're all the same team. But I wonder if that would, change the planning of who actually comes to those meetings. If we went, right, what are we trying to get out of this meeting today? Position descriptions, role clarity aside, who is going to be of most value to the conversation that we need to have?
Yeah. No, very few people feel offended if they're not invited to a video meeting.
True.
A lot of people feel offended if they're not invited to that meeting's in the boardroom, I better be there.
Yeah.
And so you go through all of that. We had a team meeting on Friday for one of our offices, kind of rotate around. And I think we had around 40 people on it. Okay, it was kind of a TGIF meeting, it's Friday afternoon, and it was a creative meeting, and all we did was tell jokes. All we did was tell jokes and make fun of it. It was a party, it was just a social party, and everybody just hung out, and we played a few games, and we did a few things and that sort of thing. Some people didn't show up because they had other obligations, and they just couldn't. No one felt bad about it, but no one was put on the spot. You can have fun stuff you can do by video. And is it as good as going out and getting a couple of margaritas afterwards? Maybe. It's probably better for you. But it's not quite as personal. So you still have to have the combination. You still want to bring the whole team together physically when it's right, but you don't need to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Just, we see that. Where you're going to see a lot of differences too. I mentioned virtual reality offices. We're working with some of the large gaming companies right now. They're the best at rendering, and you look at things like Microsoft's HoloLens. So we're planning to create some virtual offices that are now virtual reality offices. So you go into your office by putting on your headset. Now, where's your office? Well, maybe it's someplace like my other office, which is right here. Maybe that's my virtual reality office. And if I want you to join me, you can actually join me in this office. Maybe it's an office overlooking New York Central Park, and I've got a big office and a conference room and that. You can actually walk in and sit down in that office with me now in holographic format. So we can start to do those things, and by 2023 there'll be products out. We'll be selling soft offices in the form of software as opposed to online, a subscription. So you won't pay rent, you'll pay a subscription for an office, and maybe it's a 1,000 square foot corner office overlooking Central Park, or maybe it's overlooking the Eiffel Tower, or something. It's on a beach where you want your office to be.
Yeah.
But everything you need in your office environment, all your communications tools, all your directories, you'll be able to see who's in their office. When all of that's available right now.
Yeah.
And it's really the way we'll be going in the future. And when we do that, we'll need even less commercial real estate, because we can do that from a single desk, replacing 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
And will we still want to get together with our friends? Absolutely. Will we still want to, even if we have 100 people in a single building that are all on the same floor, that are all in different virtual reality offices, there's got to be a nice lounge. There's got to be a nice place to take your headset off and go have that cup of coffee and hang out. So you'll find officing structures changing quite radically in the next few years. By 2030, 33, there won't be anything else.
Yeah. So Frank, what are you most excited about that's becoming either the new normal, or even just some of these innovations that are happening as a result of problem solving for what we need right now, even in the next 12 months?
Well, one thing, and this is going to sound really strange, offices aren't always clean. They will be in the future. All common space will be very, very clean in the future. I know that sounds a little strange, but
Maybe you elaborate.
well, if as a result of this pandemic, cleanliness is literally now next to godliness. So we're going to see a difference in the way people treat and respect environments, and that's going to start with everything being super clean. And that's going to be a major difference. I don't know if I'm excited about that or not, but that's going to be an outcome of our current experience that I think will last for quite some time. I think it will become ingrained in our psyches on that. Technology is always exciting to me. I know my first video system like this I had in 1982. So I think probably before you were born. So I've always been excited by technology. In fact, our company, we were the first commercial installation in a joint venture with Bell Labs in 1980 that simultaneously transferred voice and data over the same 4-pair twisted cable to a touchscreen instrument sitting on a desk that was interactive for both telecommunications as well as computing.
Wow. Yeah.
So we've always led in technology within our industry, not as product inventors, but as putting together user structures. and we continue to want to do that. That's a big part of who we are as a company. Other things that I think are exciting to me is, again, the ability to cross borders without visas. You've mentioned you have friends in Manila and they're locked down. I have friends in Manila too, and I speak with them on a regular basis. And I can cross that border without getting on a plane, and pretty soon I'll be able to do it holographically. And that's kind of fun. I'll be able to walk into their office, and that's fun. Fun thing to think of. Physically, I won't be there, but it'll be as close as I can get in the technology that we understand today.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that that's going to change business. If you can sit across from someone rather than even have a good video call with them, your ability to communicate through body language, through your total person, not just a two-dimensional person, but your total person, will be much stronger, and that will make people closer. And that will bridge a lot of cultural gaps and hopefully political gaps that we have all over the world. That would be nice to have everybody be a little bit nicer to each other.
Absolutely.
That's always a good thing.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I just look forward to the next 20, 30 years of my career as an investor primarily. That's what we're doing right now, and an awful lot of in the prop tech sector, and is trying to guide companies that we're involved with. And we started as a property company, became an operating company, became a technology company, and now we're primarily a technology investment company. So that's our next 10 or 15-year plan.
Cool. So what will we expect in terms of Frank Cottle? You mentioned that majority of the time you're spending with your investor hat on, but also guiding those companies through, what the next phase looks like. Is that without, I guess, pinpointing exactly what you're doing, or want to give you flexibility how you answer that?
Oh yeah, well, no, we're in the flexible workplace sector.
Yeah.
And prop tech, the technology which drives and empowers flexible work, is something that we're very interested in. And things that create greater mobility without physical mobility, but greater technical mobility. We're very interested in that. Things that allow us to have a little better quality of life without trying to invent something totally magic, but like say little things.
Yeah.
Is very important to us. So I don't think we have any magic formula, but we do have about 50 years of experience.
Yeah.
So our one company now, we've been running it for almost 42 years, and that gives us a lot of experience. We've seen a lot of business cycles. We've seen a lot of companies come and go, a lot of problems come and go, and a lot of new problems come up.
Yeah.
But I think our experience gives us a foundation by which to make good decisions, as I was mentioning afterwards. In fact, I had a kind of seems funny to me now, little decision-making story. When I was in college, my sophomore year, I went to the Bahamas scuba diving, and I didn't come back. I stayed through and changed my college courses to independent study, etc. And this is in the 1960s, and colleges had a little different attitude about things back then. And so when I came back, took my finals, even though I did well in all my courses, the college dropped me for the quarter and said, because I hadn't been in attendance. So I was a virtual guy even back then, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't been in attendance, so I lost a quarter. So I had to go back and explain to my father, who'd been paying for a very, very expensive private college.
I can imagine.
Guess what? I haven't been there. I've done this, I've done that, and they failed me for the quarter, so I'm going to have to retake it. Oh, and by the way, they kicked me out. They've not invited me to return. And my dad, he would come from an old ranching and farming family here in the Western U.S. in California. He said, "Well, did you learn anything?" And I said, "Yes, decisions have consequences." He said, "Good." That was it. but that's, I think, where I started thinking about in business, you have to make decisions and they do have consequences. So you make them with care and you learn along the way. I learned never to do that again in my example, but you learn along the way. And that's the most important thing, is to just never stop learning. Never think you've achieved your goal. Oh, I finally made it. No, you haven't. Because there's something ahead of you. There's always somebody with something bigger or something richer or something faster. If you say, I've achieved my goal, I've done everything I wanted, go away. It's like you're no fun anymore. So I think that's it. Just know you've never achieved your goal. Just keep setting a new one and keep moving forward.
Yeah, constant evolution.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I guess to wrap up then, Frank, if there was anything that you would say as that 1% improvement or way of, I guess, moving forward that people can take away from this conversation, what would that be?
Boy, I don't know. I think I've everything. 1% incremental.
That one thing you would change or improve or consider.
I think it's an awareness, a situational awareness.
Okay.
And I'll use this pandemic as an example of that. When I heard about this here in the U.S., that there was this problem in China, I didn't stop and say, oh, there's a problem in China. Darn, poor Chinese. I immediately called people in China and said, what's going on? What's really going on? And they said, oh, it's a lot worse than you think. There's some real problems here, and here's what's happening, and here's what we're going to be doing, and here's what we're going to be faced with. And then I said, okay. Then I said, great. Then I thought, well, wait a second. I heard about this problem in Italy. What did I do? I called a friend in Milan. Said, hey, what's going on, Sergio? And he said, here's what's going on. We're going to do this. Like, okay, fine. So by being situationally aware, our entire company was working remote, and our entire tech team had put everybody in their households and everything almost 2 weeks before the US was locked down. All of our tech we had time to test everything. No one stressed. No one got upset. Everyone knew that, oh, they're moving me. I'm going to keep my job. Everybody knew that they were secure on things. The business would be normal. We could support our customers. Everything, we could run it as normal. And I think just being really situationally aware, having your eyes really open, and then recognizing what we call our pebble in a pond theory, is everything starts somewhere. Drop a pebble in a pond. There's always a ripple effect. And it hits the flat shore, there's one type of wave. It hits the cove, there's another type of wave. It hits the rocks, there's another type of reaction. The pebble starts someplace, and then there's different reactions and different time. Maybe there's the near side of the pond, and that's the far side of the pond. So you want to be situationally aware and see where that pebble is falling, and understand where you are in the pond and how it's going to affect you. And if you don't do that in business today, whether it's in your own town or whether it's on a global basis like we do, you get in trouble one day. Someday you'll have a problem. If you do it, you'll probably avoid the problems. Yeah,
very cool. Thank you, Frank. Some of the golden nuggets you provided have definitely resonated with me, and it's going to be one of those things I reflect on listening back and go, okay, how can I actually implement some of those learnings from Frank? So I appreciate it. If people do want to get in touch with you in terms of what you're doing or the journey that your company is going through, what would be the best way to do that? Would that be through LinkedIn or your website?
Well, LinkedIn is always good. Our primary business website is alliancevirtualoffices.com. I'm easily to be reached through that. And a website that's actually the largest website dealing with the future of work and flexible workplace is a website called allwork.space. And we have about 3.5 million people connected to that site right now. And if you just want to know what's going on in the industry, around flexible work, then allwork.space is the best place to find that on a global basis.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What time is it over there? I was going to say good evening.
It's 4:15 in the afternoon.
Okay.
4:50 in the afternoon.
Yeah. So no doubt you've got some rest of the evening to enjoy.
I'm going to go out and take a bike ride along the beach and then come back and have a nice dinner with my lovely wife.
Oh, sounds amazing. Well, enjoy that. Again, thank you so much for the hour of knowledge and insight that you've provided. This won't be our last conversation. I'll make sure to keep in touch and let you know how things are going on our side of the world. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what other things you do in this space. So thanks again.
My pleasure. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
And that wraps up another insightful conversation about the future of work. And now we want to hear from you. What was the biggest takeaway from this conversation? Make sure you share your learnings on LinkedIn and also tag our guest speakers. And of course, if you or somebody you know has some more interesting take on the future of work, send us an email to contact@wearefuture.com. Until next time, and keep creating the future of work.